Hey everybody, welcome to a very special edition of Michigan Extra Point. Not live in this particular case because we've got the state semifinals happening on Saturday, and it really wouldn't make much of sense for us to be here Friday night and to be here talking post-game of no game. So we might also do the preview a few days early and give ourselves a Friday night off, the first one in about 12 weeks. So
we got to get our rest for the Super Saturday we have on tap.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Or we'll be covering volleyball, one of the two.
Well, and exactly, which is actually I'll be at swimming.
Right,
I'll be filming a girl swimming on 10 a.m. Saturday. So anyway, Scott Burnstein, Matt Mowery, I'm Lorne Plant. Welcome inside the video podcast room of the State Champs Sports Network. This is where we gather each and every week to talk high school football. Normally, again, we do this on a Friday night. We're doing this technically on a Wednesday. This will premiere probably on Thursday. That's probably when you'll be catching this. So again, feel free to chat. We can, we'll have somebody monitoring our live chat so that we can, comment to what you think about the games. What we want to do is talk about all the semifinals. We've got 16 that are happening on Saturday, and then we've also got the 8-player finals. We'll comment on that at the end of the show. I just want to quickly give a shout-out to our sponsors, and that is Lawrence Technological University. It is also the MHSAA, and it is Hungry Howie's. We thank them very much for their support of this program and everything we do at State Champs. So what we're going to do is we're going to follow a format in talking about each division as they will play out at the finals on Friday at Ford Field. A week from this Friday. Hard to believe. A week from this Friday, it will be the state championship games. It feels like we were just talking PKC not too long ago. But here we are, and the state semifinals are upon us, and there are some very intriguing matchups throughout the MHSAA playoffs this year, and always teams that are there that we did not expect, and some teams that, of course, playing the way that we expected them to play, whether they did in the beginning of the season or not. Here they are. Let's talk about Division 8, which will be the 10 a.m. finals on Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. And we're going to talk with the semifinal matchups that we have. The first one taking place at Mount Pleasant High School Stadium, and that is Ubly, 10-2 on the year at Beal City, who is 11-1.
Ubly's got a great rushing attack. They got a two-headed monster. I think name is escaping me right now. Got it right in front of me. Shane Ostentowski and Carson Haleski did a little research. I put a little notepad together for my.
Does Shane play another sport? Ostentowski, name rings a bell. Like we covered him in something else.
I know he's had like a couple 4-touchdown games this year.
No, maybe I just mentioned him.
The name does ring a bell, but it could be one of those families.
Yes, exactly. What are your thoughts on this one, Matt?
Well, we've been talking all year long about kind of the revival of Beal City, and routinely when I worked up in Mount Pleasant, Beal City was the one that we would have to drive down to the Silver Dome for, and it was always that 8 o'clock right out of the chute game, or the D8 game, right out of the chute, the first thing. Yep. And you're still trying to work off the L-tryptophan from Thanksgiving.
Yes, that's true.
You're all groggy that morning after.
It is.
I literally remember leaving Mount Pleasant, and as the people were lining up for the Black Friday stuff, leaving the Meijer that time and driving, it was like 5 a.m. But you get down and Beal City would, play DePorres or play somebody like that.
Right.
But they had their share of good times, and this was a team and a program that would routinely be in that game, and they had a down period. They were 2-7 last year, I believe, and now it's kind of back to what we always knew of Beal City. And certainly, I know a lot of people in the Thumb were a little unhappy with the placement of that game, considering the fact that Beal City's got to drive about 4.5 miles to Mount Pleasant Community Stadium, and they've got to drive about 100. But it still should be, regardless of the venue, that should be a good game between those two.
Beal City's only loss, it was they got shut out by McBain, but that was it. Other than that, they have played lights out from the beginning. And again, pretty stingy defensively, besides the McBain game, regular season-wise, only giving up 14 the most. Now, they've given up 22-20 and then 14 in the last one. But they beat St. Ignace and Johannesburg, Lewiston, Ishpeming, teams that are all used to being in the playoffs and used to competing. I would say that, Ubly we haven't talked a whole lot about, at least I don't remember us talking a whole lot about this season. But, their losses, Harper Beach, Cassidy, two great programs.
Harper Beach was unbeaten in the regular season, I believe, and Cassidy still playing.
Right, and they beat Harper Beach in the playoffs. So they avenged that loss, just put 56 on Saginaw Nouvelle.
Yeah.
And Nouvelle is a team that's there. So
they seem to be playing their best football, when it counts and gaining traction in their playoff push. And when you have a really strong rushing attack, that's something that you can always it's something that most likely will always be there for you.
Yeah.
It's not something where you need to catch fire or get into a groove. If you got a rushing attack that's consistent, it's something that you can kind of hang your hat on.
who do you like in this one?
I'm going to have to go with Beal City.
That's what I'm saying.
But those thumb teams are always, it seems like, tough as nails. I mean, Beal City, generally, that was kind of their MO as well. But those thumb teams are always tough as nails. And it's an ugly program that's been there before. They were in the semis in 2016 and then back twice in the late 2000s. They were in the finals. But, yeah, it's two programs that are not unused to this stage.
I mean, I'll go with Beal City as well.
Okay.
But I just wanted to kind of shout out Ubley and
No.
let everyone know what they're doing over there.
Absolutely, and they've had a tremendous playoff run up to this point, and can put a lot of points on the board. So we'll see how it works. So we've got Beal City in that one. They'll take on the winner of Fowler and Reading. This one will take place at Battle Creek, Harper Creek.
2 one-loss teams, both of them their only loss to PW.
Yep.
Who, again, still playing and is one of the best small school programs
No
going
question.
in the state right now. It was a Fowler team that was kind of chasing PW, their conference mates in the CMAC, and they were kind of chasing all year long. And Reading, the defending D8 champs, they loaded up the non-conference schedule and played PW right out of the gate and got shut out. But it was still a close game, if I recall. I think it was a 14-0 game. So that's a Reading team that obviously knows what this stage is all about, having been here last year and won it all.
And it's another team that has a really good running attack.
Yeah.
A very a group of stalwarts up front in the trenches, and a bunch. I think they got at least one 300-pounder.
Right.
I think they've got the two.
Okay.
The brothers, right?
Yeah. I'm got a note of it. Af Holter.
Yes. The
Af
Holter
Holter.
brothers.
There you go.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. Nick and Ben.
Yep.
Very nice. They've put up 50 or more 5 times this season. Now, in the playoffs, they've, while they may not have scored as many points as they have over the regular season, they only had given up 6 points going into the game against Lenawee Christian. They beat them 26-21. And again, Lenawee Christian was rolling.
Yes.
And so that is a good win for them. And to get them this far, and this Reading team, they just pretty much beat everybody who's in front of them. So
yeah, and like I said, that
Except for
PW, that was a 14-0 game. So that's a win when you're a D8 team and you can take on a D6 team.
And in addition to that beefy line, and the spark plug rushing the football is another kid that we have a really great crop of power backs in the state of Michigan right now. And we're talking about Division 8. You got to talk about Elijah Strine, who's like 5'10", 220. And going up in between those tackles, that's a heavy load to bring down.
Yeah, and Royal Oak Shrine had a really good season this year, and for them to lose 33-0 in the weather conditions that we had, defensively, that is really just putting it on someone.
I think it was a size issue where Shrine hadn't matched up against that type of physicality, in their region of the Catholic League.
Right. So who are we taking in the Fowler Reading matchup?
I'm going to take Reading.
I am going to take
I'll
Reading.
go Reading.
Okay, so we've got a Reading Beal City state final is the way that we are predicting it here on the State Champs Sports Network. All right, well, let us move on to what will be the 1 p.m. game, which I always call the marquee matchup, the 1 o'clock game at Ford Field the day after Thanksgiving. That is Division II. Of course, the story out of Division II is Birmingham Seal.
Wow.
And, whether they advance beyond this, the fact that they've made it this far is amazing.
It's really impressive. One of the best coaching jobs I've seen in my time covering high school sports in this area, going on a decade plus. Jimmy DeWald is just a wizard with that clipboard and the headphones, and the motivation, and those kids are just all so dialed in. We've talked about it a little bit on here about them simplifying things, trimming that playbook down to from 24 plays down to about 4 or 5.
Yeah,
and they just have really focused on perfecting those 4 or 5 plays, and they run like a triple option. Caleb Norris done a real good job in his first year under center with the keys to that offense, and then Chaz Strecker is a really underrated, game-changing tailback. Mm-hmm. He's coming close to 2,000 yards right now. For a kid that I frankly I didn't know his name before before this season.
Yeah, that's the beauty about high school.
Well, it's hard to know if we overrated or underrated the OAA White. I mean, I think we all thought, maybe if there was a Birmingham team that was going to go this deep, it was going to be Groves.
I mean,
of course,
and Coach Flair's done a great job with that program. And
Final Fours in 2 of the last 3 years up until this season.
Absolutely, and I think we thought Oak Park was maybe poised to make a deep run, considering all the talent they had.
Yep.
And yet, it's the 3rd place team from the White.
Who last year was in the blue.
Right.
Yeah, and of course the interesting thing is, and like you just said, that was playing true. They lost to Oak Park 41-21. They lost to Groves 35-14. And then maybe like you said, that is when they went simple. And
they actually went simple last year.
Okay.
Because they had when Coach DeWald got there, they had some really early success, won some league titles, and then they had about a 4-year run where I don't think they made the playoffs and were under 500. And coaches kind of got in a room in the summer of 18, and it's like, we need to make a shift.
Yeah, and it's worked. And the one good thing you've got to give the Maples a lot of credit for is whatever they're dialing up on offense is working, because they have put up a ton of points this season, and just in the playoffs. Or at least leading right into the playoffs, it was 63, 55, 42, and 44. That's their last.
And they have no games, no depth.
Or 4 games of scoring.
They have no depth. They have their
That's
varsity roster carried 24 players, carried 24 players this year, or 23 players.
Well, and if it gets into a track meet and it gets into a high-scoring game, that fatigue may be an issue. And frankly,
they don't have the playmakers that King has. Yeah. I'm not counting Seaholm out by any measure. I think that when you're this deep in the playoffs and you're on the kind of momentum swing that you have in Seaholm right now, I would not be shocked if Seaholm pulled an upset here. Yeah. But that said, there's no debate about who's got the most game-changing talent on both sides of the ball. It's King.
There's no question about it. And, they started 0-2. Losses to Catholic Central, losses to Muskegon. The Catholic Central game was a 2-point game. It was basically, anybody's game.
And that was the turnovers in the first half largely that were the cause of why they were in that hole.
Right. And then Cam Martinez went crazy, like he did against them the year before.
Like Cam does.
But you had DeQuan Finn kind of picking that up, so it was a closer game. Yes, exactly, like he does. Since then, lights out football. Granted, they play in a depleted PSL, but Cass Tech, who we saw make a run, they put up 47 on them when they played, and Denby, who is a team that's still alive, they beat them, 27-6. I bet it wasn't even that close when it comes to the PSL final. I wasn't there, so I don't want to take anything away from Denby, but they've had 45 and up for their first 3 playoff games, and
they might have.
And the quarterback,
I would say the quarterback Dante DJ Moore, in terms of prospecting for the next level, you could rank him number 1 in the state. I mean, I wouldn't rank him number 1 in the state overall quarterbacks right now, but if you are, you could make an argument that in terms of where you're going. For Saturday football, he could be the guy with the most potential.
Is he going to be the first sophomore that's in our Mr. Football race as of next year?
It's conceivable that's going to be a quarterback-heavy crop next year, because we've got several who will be holdovers from this year who are going to be going into their senior seasons.
But we'll have 10. We'll have 10 candidates.
10 spots.
And,
he's not managing a game either. I mean,
I know.
He's spreading it around. I mean, if you want to say any one thing, he's hitting all of his targets, and he has a lot of them.
And then he's got the great equalizer in the backfield, and Penny Boone, who's another great power back.
And as we said, this is Penny Boone weather. Now, provided he plays, and his Instagram post from the other day was a joke, and I think it was.
Okay,
so yeah,
it had to be.
It had to be a joke, but yeah, this is Penny Boone weather. I mean, just you load up the 230-pound back and have him run downhill. And
please share the joke for those who don't know.
Well, he posted on Instagram a picture of what looked like a report card with all Fs and said, "I'm not going to be able to play anymore." And every response to it was, the crying eyes emoji. So reasonably certain that that's a joke that the rest
maybe
of us
somebody said something
yeah.
or whatever. Like
I think a storyline here, and I haven't checked in with the Seahome contingent yet to update this, so it's kind of up in the air right now. I guess would be the health status of James DeWald, Jimmy's son, who was the senior captain, middle linebacker, really is the linchpin of that defense. He's been out, or he was out as of the district, maybe the district opener or the district finals, and he was on the sideline. He was on the sideline in the district finals on crutches. They said that they thought they could get him back, so I don't know if he was back against Port Huron or not. But him being on the field, it would make quite a difference.
Right. It's also a rallying cry too. If you've got one of your injured,
and he's the heart and soul, the leader, the straw that stirs the drink for that defense. And what was really cool to see in that district final against Groves, where they were just pouring it on. You had James DeWald on crutches, but sometimes he's grabbing the headphones and calling, almost like calling in plays to the defense. And then he's grabbing kids as they're coming back to the sideline, being like, not just coaching, but encouraging and saying, I want to be there. I want to be out there with you doing this, but you guys are doing such a great job. And look for this next time, look for that next time. And having that encouragement on the sidelines from someone like that. I think it really fueled them and it's propelled them to where they are right now.
The 3:00 game at Novi High School.
Because they got a double
header.
They're
hosting too.
That's right. So got a double header. So I'm assuming we're taking King to advance. Yes. Okay.
But again, I would not be surprised if Seahome somehow pulled out a miracle, and you have
certainly would be the story going into the full.
I know this is a really an aside, and it's not the same sport, but go back 31 years, 1988, the Miracle Maples, the famous baseball team that was, I think they were a 500 baseball team that went into the playoffs and just had a miracle run where they were pulling out all these last-second victories, and they ended up beating Steve Avery, the future MLB draft pick or MLB starter with the Braves in the semifinals, and just had a run to the state championship that nobody saw coming. So, who knows?
That sounds like a legend show.
I was waiting for the connection. I thought he was going to say, and on that team.
No, I'm just saying that the Maples athletic program, the athletic program has a team in their history that just went out from from 0 to 100, went from an afterthought to a state champion.
Very interesting. Good little tidbit of knowledge.
Sorry, I know. Went down a little history rabbit hole.
Little rabbit hole.
Yeah. On the other side, Muskegon Mona Shores back in familiar territory, taking on Walled Lake Western, who's also familiar with semifinals runs.
A clash of two terrific quarterbacks.
We won't have 9 inches of snow this year or anything of that nature. Weather should not be a factor, which is good because you want to see these teams play with their. This game will take place at Okemos High School.
Zach Trainer for Western, Caden Broersma for Muskegon Mona Shores. Broersma quarterbacked Mona into the Ford Field to the state finals last year, so he has the experience factor.
Yeah. Zach
Trainer wasn't a starter last year; he was a backup, and then it's just has been on fire ever since week 1 against Lakeland. It's an exciting game within a game.
And we could say it now because by the time this video comes out, Abdur Rahman Yassin is a Final Four.
And that's Trainer's top target in the passing game, Northwestern commit.
Yes, Trainer did not quite get into the Final Four. Yassin did for Mr. Football this year, and I believe he is going to need to make some big plays if they expect to beat this Mona Shores team.
75 catches, 18 touchdowns, 1,500 yards receiving. He's had a spectacular year especially when, in August, eve of the season, we were thinking, he's going to be in street clothes. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think the saddest part is Mona Shores kind of got lost in the discussion. Even when you look at these Final Four teams, there are storylines with the rest of them, and we kind of go, oh, yeah, and Mona Shores is back here.
Right.
I mean, they lost to Rockford by, I think it was a touchdown.
34-21.
Yeah, and then they got just, Muskegon did to them what Muskegon does to people.
53-0.
And that's, when you lose in your crosstown rivalry late in the season, like week 8, I believe it was. And they kind of went into the postseason as kind of not an afterthought, but just kind of a maybe they're not the powerhouse that we thought they might be, and then yet here they are. They beat up on the entire city of Midland.
I was going to say
and they beat a very good Portage team,
Portage Northern team, and you're very familiar with the Midland and Midland Dalborough. You were at the game that they played against each other, so you kind of know the quality of competition they played against. For them to win, they beat Midland 2013, beat Dow 35-12.
Yeah, and that was a Dow team that ended up beating Midland in Week 9. I covered that game last year, and Midland won it, and then they faced against again in the playoffs right before. And the Midland Mona Shores game was a rematch of last year's semis right about this time. Yeah, both of those were very good teams. They were at the top of the Saginaw Valley North Division with Mount Pleasant, and Dow ended up beating both Midland and Mount Pleasant in the last couple of weeks to be able to make the playoffs. And then, those were two tough teams. And then obviously with Amos, that Portage Northern team was one that was in the top 25 for much of the season, in and out right at the bottom. And that was another team that was just tough. I mean, and you look at the point totals allowed, and this Mona Shores team actually is far better than last year's team was in terms of points that they've surrendered so far.
Yeah, and that was a 5-point game with Northern, as we expected, a back-and-forth battle, which I'm sure it was. They pulled it out. Western has so many weapons because, again, when you talk about, C.J. Brown and you talk about Ahern,
let's also point out
he's able to do.
Yassine isn't just a major factor on offense. He shuts down the other team's best wide receiver it's his job, which it is.
Yes.
2 interceptions that I think he does not get thrown at a whole lot. So to have 2 interceptions,
he's a Division I
cornerback.
a Power 5 cornerback in addition to being a Power 5 receiver, which speaks to what a talented young man he is.
It does, and that gives him matchup advantages. And
C.J. Brown, both sides of the ball as well.
Absolutely.
He's one of the best tailbacks in Metro Detroit, but he's going to Northern Illinois as a safety.
Yep, and he catches a lot out of the backfield.
And he's probably the best, at least in Metro Detroit. I can't speak for the state, but in terms of what I've seen, he's the best running back catching the ball in the flat and getting space and doing damage.
Yeah, exactly, and that's how you extend drives.
He caught a big touchdown last week.
He did, and that's how you gas defenses. And, again, I think Western has the offensive weapons. Churchill was able to put up points, and they were gutty, and they made it interesting. But the
game wasn't as close as it looked.
Right, but in the end, it was Walled Lake Western, and that's who I will take to move on to the state finals. Gentlemen, you?
I'll go Western.
Western as well.
By less than a touchdown, though. I think it's going to be close.
So we are expecting a Walled Lake Western Detroit Martin Luther King matchup.
A rematch of 2016.
We are now going to move to what will be the Friday 4:30 game, and that is the Division 6 game. And those semifinals feature some teams from all over the place, really. Mm-hmm. And the first one is Montague taking on Maple City Glen Lake. This will be played in Clare. Well, we've talked about both these teams quite a bit, and we've certainly given Maple City Glen Lake some love this season.
And Montague getting back to Ford Field after last year. I mean, I think a lot of people maybe looked at that 2-week span there in the middle where they lost to rivals Muskegon Oak Ridge and Ravenna by, I think, a total of 12 points. Yep. And they went, obviously close games, but I think that kind of put them a little bit behind the 8-ball in terms of, the pecking order of where you maybe thought contenders were. But obviously, I mean, that's a storied program at Montague that is very well used to being this deep in the playoffs. And
they don't have Jackson Lumen Christi waiting for them this year.
Which is nice.
Yes, exactly.
And Glen Lake's lone loss was to Kingsley, a D5 finalist, and that's like an unbeaten Kingsley team that Tim Wooer's got rolling. So that's going to be a very, very good game.
Which is good. I always like when the 4:30 on Fridays are good games. They generally are. Ithaca would usually be making up that space, and a lot of times they'd be kind of blowouts.
Drew Collins is a nice quarterback over there and does a really good job running that offense. He's a gunslinger back there.
Right. Well, they avenged their loss to the Ravenna, and that's all. That always gives you a ton of, momentum. And after they lost to Ravenna, they came back, played Shelby, and won 75-0. So that kind of put a stamp on the fact that we don't want to lose anymore.
And they got a nice sophomore running back in Dylan Everett.
Okay.
So just want to shout out those guys.
Yeah, good. Always good to shout them out. They put up a lot of points. I mean, they only beat Ravenna 20-13, but obviously a good battle. Put up 55 against Newaygo, 48 against Sanford Meridian. And so now they'll take on probably the toughest team they'll face this season. You think?
I guess it depends on who they get in the the finals if they get past.
I meant
up to this
date.
point. Yeah, I would
point.
think so.
Yes.
Yeah, I think Glen Lake is a very, very, very good program, and I think we maybe thought that they would get this far last year. I'm trying to remember who they lost to.
They lost to Beaverton in the pre-district.
Right. Yeah.
42-14 too, so it wasn't even close.
Well, you just mentioned Sanford
but they
Meridian
made the finals in 16, also against Jackson Lumen Christi, that they lost. So both of them are very happy that they won't be on the other side of that, and they don't have to play St. Francis either.
Sure.
So who typically is in that position to win. So this is kind of a toss-up, I guess you would say, but I will go with Glen Lake just based on. What we've talked about, we've looked at, and maybe some of the competition that
with
they
the
have played.
Dynamic Drew Collins.
Okay, so you're going Montague.
I'm going to go with Montague as well.
Montague.
Okay,
Yep.
Good. Well, good. I'm glad we disagree. And at least we're giving love to everybody, so I could say, hey, at least Lauren's with us. Onsted and Monroe St. Mary Catholic Central. Matt Mowery has some big fans at SMCC, and
they were getting on me for my D6 picks,
yes.
and hey. That's what they're for. They're so we can spark conversation.
Absolutely.
And we can talk about things like this. And quite honestly, I mean, it's hard with CC because they play in a league with bigger schools, kind of like a school we're going to talk about in a little bit in Flint Powers, where you're going up against schools that have hundreds and hundreds more students than you do, and then when you get into the playoffs, you're playing schools your size, more or less. That's a program that has a very, very good tradition, and their tradition of running the T. And as they found out a couple weeks ago when they played Warren Michigan Collegiate, that T is not broken. It is operating fully functionally, and it is rolling over people, and that's going to be one where, I mean, Onsted.
You don't see that. If you don't see that a lot, that's right. Really tough to grasp in terms of what the anecdote to that offense is,
especially if it's run very well, and that precision is pretty emblematic of what they've done in the past, and they're facing an Onsted team that had a couple of losses in the Lenawee County against an unbeaten Hillsdale, and then they lost the week before that to Blissfield, and since then they've kind of been rolling. They beat Hillsdale. They actually knocked Hillsdale out of the playoffs. I believe that was the first loss for Hillsdale last week. That was a 12-0 shutout. So it's one where that team not really a surprise because we knew it was a good team.
They hadn't won a district though, I believe, in 12 years.
Yeah, they were 3-6 last year. Yeah. So when they had a good run after, because those two losses in back-to-back weeks in week 3 and 4 put them at 2-2, but they haven't lost since then. So they've really kind of gotten hot late in the season.
Coach
It's good. The forecast in Ypsilanti, which is where this game will be played for Saturday, 40 degrees, which is good football weather. I think,
it's good tea weather.
So I was just going to say, if it was going to be really cold, then that could be an issue. We could have seen that ball on the ground a lot because it's all about the exchange or lack of exchange.
And over at Onsted, Coach Terry Berry's son is the quarterback, and they have a pretty formidable running attack as well. A couple guys that I think both are types of backs that can get you 100 yards in a game. One of his name's Barth. I think it's Rourke Barth. He had like a 200-yard game, I believe, in the district finals. And the other one is Travis Hill.
Okay. And the only loss for SMCC this year was Milan, who was
unbeaten.
Unbeaten coming into last week. And it was only 28-21 in that one. So it was, it's not a wipeout by any means.
Yeah, it's a D4 team again.
Exactly.
Where, quite a bit bigger.
Yep.
And obviously with Tristan Hines, an EMU bound athlete, at least I know he's going to play DB and he's playing quarterback for Milan. But that was a Milan squad that was among the best in Milan history when you look at points scored and so forth. And he was ranking right up there with the greats in that program history. So I mean, obviously, like we said, that's not a bad loss.
Right,
certainly.
right. So I'm going to take Monroe St. Mary Catholic Central to beat Onstead. How about you guys?
I'm going to take CC as well.
I'm going CC.
So we'll have an SMCC, Maple City, Glen Lake. Lots of names.
In your world, in our world, we'll have SMCC,
that's right.
Yeah,
Montague.
That's right. In my world. Aren't we all in my world? I got you. You're right. Okay, so we shall see how that one plays out. But so far, we're all on par except for the Montague, Maple City, Glen Lake. So the nightcap on Friday night is always Division 4. And there has been in a lot of, at least the history of the state champs era, Detroit Country Day playing in that particular ball game. And they have, I believe, a really great chance to do that again. However, Flint Powers is one of those teams that I was really high on, and then I was really low on, and then I got really high on. Remember, I picked them last week.
You did, and
I
you
picked
were
them to beat Notre Dame
all
Prep.
the way back
The
on
flying
the
Philpots?
Yeah.
Yes, I was. I was all the way back.
Well, and again,
so what happens this week, though?
Well, we talked about earlier, and the same thing that we were talking about with CC. They play in a league with largely D1 powerhouses like Lapeer and Davison that's still playing in the D1 bracket that put 90 points on them. I believe it was in back-to-back weeks. May have been separated.
Was.
Yeah.
No, they were in back-to-back weeks, and again they were 30. Well, actually, they were separated by one win, and that was an overtime win over Kazoo Central.
Right.
They won 28-22 after a 38. I'm sorry. No, they were back-to-back. I'm sorry. I looked at the wrong thing. Davison and Lapeer was a 48-0 loss and a 42-0 loss.
90 points
so
to
you
those
think,
two
like,
schools.
well, they're just, exactly.
Right. But the other 10 schools have scored 142 total points, and they shut down a very, very potent Notre Dame prep attack last week, and I covered that game.
Yes.
You mentioned Luke Philpotts. I think that's the key to whether or not they can hang with Country Day, is whether or not
I call the team the Flying Philpots.
Yeah, it's a team that's predicated on defense and it's predicated on the running game, but a large part of that running game is Luke Philpotts, who at quarterback. Now their backup came in and threw one very, very big pass last week, I'll tell
you something that's not a good sign if you're a team like Flint Powers that's relying on the firepower of your quarterback, is the fact that Country Day has two cornerbacks in the defensive backfield that are both locked down. One, Marcus Shepard, who's going to Bowling Green, I believe, and the other one, Saborn Campbell, one of the best baseball players we have in the state, who's just turned into a real tremendous two-sport guy, is breaking out on the football field this year.
Sure.
He's going to Duke, I believe, on a baseball scholarship.
Yeah, and the benefit of Philpotts is he's a run-pass option kind of guy where you can do both with him, and that was the problem. Badly twisted his ankle in the first half, and Marcus Groves, the backup, the senior backup, had to come in. And like I said, completed one really big pass that was instrumental in the game because it got them on the doorstep. But he's less of a runner than, so it kind of eliminates one of the options you have of attacking a defense. So now you're more down to just the running backs, but Groves is capable of throwing the ball a little bit. But Country Day is,
and Country Day's got a senior quarterback that's battle tested and incredibly savvy, and Elon Mitchell, one of those guys that just he's going to beat you. Obviously with his physical skills, but he's going to beat you with his football IQ as well. He's a leader in the huddle,
Brendan Mann can come in.
And Brandon Mann, who's the heir apparent to the quarterback spot. It looks like, and
he can play. He can step in and play if necessary because Alon has had issues with his knee.
Yeah.
I like the defensive line for Country Day and their linebacker
Caleb
play.
Tiernan's a blue chipper.
Yeah, he's huge.
Yeah.
I mean,
he's a kid who we were thinking about for our
Yes.
Anvil. Yes, he is very large.
Yeah.
He'll definitely be in the mix next year.
Yes, for sure. So I think from a defensive standpoint, I think Country Day is going to be able to withstand what Flint. So I think I predict a low-scoring game, very similar to this Notre Dame prep game, except I think Country Day will find a way to win.
Let me tip the proverbial hat. I don't have the hat on right now, but to Coach Mack over at Country Day, because even though he is at the forefront of a program that he's Well, he hasn't. Well, he has built it, but took it over from Coach D'Angelo, a program that was already a state power.
But he's been there
kept it
many
as a state
years
power,
now. Yeah,
has a state championship.
Yeah, he does.
Has taken his team to numerous state finals, deep tournament runs. But just like Seaholm, nobody was really talking about Country Day in the preseason. They've run the table so far.
Yeah,
they haven't
undefeated.
lost.
Nope.
They've done it really kind of under the radar. And again, it's just a great coaching job by Coach Mack.
Well, like we talked about a couple weeks ago with Notre Dame Prep, the independent schedule is part of that because you don't really talk about them in a league race and they're playing here and they're playing there. And it's also that kind of they've been in a little bit of a lull because, like you said, this was traditionally the one we were always, when I worked at the Oakland Press and was waiting on stories from you on Friday, it was this game. It was routinely this game. And since then, there's been this little, kind of lull
and frankly those teams that were making those runs to Ford Field were kind of hitting a wall where they weren't playing their best football at Ford Field, and those were teams that were considerably more highly touted than this group. Maybe that's good for this group.
Well, and they handled Milan.
Yeah
You know what I mean? They handled them, and they've kind of run through Harper Woods, both of them.
Despite the undefeated record, this group goes in with kind of the least expectations, at least from a beginning of the season point of view, and maybe they're the ones that are raising the state championship trophy at the end of the day.
I agree. That game is at 1 o'clock. It'll be at Parker Middle School in Howell, your neck of the woods.
It is.
So they will take on the winner of Hudsonville Unity Christian and Grand Rapids Catholic Central. This could be a state finals match.
That's a clash of titans.
Yeah. Yes, it is. This is going to be something that, I've seen Grand Rapids Catholic Central one time, and that was when they beat Rouge in week one.
That was
Rouge.
It's like thunder meet lightning, and now let's come together and just have
that literally seems like months ago. You know what I mean? Week one of the football season. Like I think of that matchup.
Warm.
Yes, exactly. It really does seem like. But I mean, Grand Rapids Catholic Central, to their credit, for several years now, have literally built themselves into a football powerhouse.
Any football powerhouse that will take on anybody. At any time.
And
played Rouge this year, played Saline early in the season last year. I saw that game, and they went
to Illinois to take on a Niles Notre Dame team that they lost to.
And they're balanced.
Very much so, yes.
Yep. And, West Catholic we used to talk about as one of those. I mean, obviously they're not as good as some of the teams they've had, but they beat them 55-0. So GRCC expects to be in the state championship game pretty much every year now. And then last year, Hudsonville Unity Christian was one of these teams that came out of nowhere. It was definitely the Cinderella story of the entire playoffs. And, we were like, well, that was a nice story. Wow, what a great win and everything. And here they are again on the precipice of getting back.
Well, and another team that, again, plays in a conference with larger schools than them, and so they routinely take 1 to 2 losses a year.
Like
and so,
Zealand West.
Exactly. And that's
Byron Center, who was the team this year.
Both of those were very good. So when you come into the postseason with 2-3 losses routinely, you kind of get overlooked as one of the quote-unquote contenders, and then you get into the postseason. And obviously, as we've watched over the last calendar year, that Hudsonville Unity Christian boys program altogether has put together quite a run. I mean, they won the boys basketball title in the winter, and it was just that momentum just kind of spread throughout the school.
It's like when Detroit Catholic Central sometimes will have all these state championship teams and somebody, but it's like the culture there now is a championship one.
And you get some crossover between the team, but not a tremendous amount. But it's just kind of that feeling in the school like it's hard. They're a hard out.
Absolutely, and they beat a good Pawpaw team last week.
And they got a quarterback. They got a quarterback with a great name, Isaac Tesla.
That is a great name.
Tesla, yes.
That is a great name.
Yep. And he had a very good state championship game last year.
Yeah, this game will be at Jenison High School. It's a 1 o'clock start. I'm going to go with Grand Rapids Catholic Central, though, in this one to get to the finals, just based on the pedigree and the fact that I have seen them, and they did play very well against a Rouge team who is still alive as well.
I'll go GRCC, too.
Yeah, I'm going to go with that. Jace Williams and GRCC is that's a tough matchup for anybody.
So a Grand Rapids Catholic Central Detroit Country Day. We've seen that
couple
that
times.
script before.
Yeah.
That will be very interesting. And we've seen actually, you think about great rivalries and others like Flint Powers and Country Day, like in boys basketball, they've had some wars.
And I bet if you go through the records in the playoffs, Country Day, I believe in a lot of those runs to Ford Field, they would run into Powers.
I think only once.
One time? Okay.
There was a period of time where they played in the regular season. I think Powers is like 5-1 against them all time. I think the one time they met was the 2015 semis. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of.
Okay, guys, we're going to take one timeout. This is the one commercial break that we will do in this show. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about the Saturday matchups, and those are the odd matchups, the odd divisions, and that's where we will be back next, right here on Extra Point.
I admit it, I love working with money, negotiating, and making big decisions. That's why I'm majoring in finance and economics at Lawrence Tech. What's truly amazing about the education here is the small class sizes that give me easy access to my professors who truly care about my future. They even helped me get a great internship. And I was able to fulfill my lifelong dream of playing college golf. Lawrence Tech, where Blue Devils dare.
The greatest honor a high school senior student athlete can earn? Detroit Athletic Club's Athlete of the Year. You're one of the tops in your sport. Prioritize education and giving back, like Cassius Winston, Megan Bobian, Rakia Jackson, and Aiden Hutchinson did. 6 male, 6 female nominees earn $1,000 in scholarship money, with $5,000 each to be awarded at a red carpet gala in downtown Detroit. Nominations accepted now. Download the application, dacathleteoftheyear.com.
You ready, Darius?
Let's do it. Anybody want an autograph?
Autograph? We're here for the stuffed crust pizza.
Stuffed crust pizza? Hey, who do you think you are? End of the line, pal.
Treat yourself to the world's first stuffed flavored crust pizza. And now, for just $6.99, try our new stuffed Howie bread.
Hungry?
Howie's!
What's up, State Champs Nation? Welcome back inside the video podcast room on the campus of Lawrence Technological University, because that is where the State Champs Sports Network studios lie. So we are in Southfield, Michigan, and we are bringing
beehive of activity.
That's right, and we are bringing you our semifinals preview for the high school football championships taking place this year, and we have just gone through all the games. We've kind of taken a final schedule to this particular program, so we've gone through all the even games. So we've talked about Division 8, Division 2, Division 6, and Division 4. We're now moving on to Saturday's contest that will take place 2 days after Thanksgiving. The tryptophan would have completely worn off. And we are getting into the 10 a.m. game, the morning game, Division 7. And what I always think about the Division 7 Saturday game, it's always an interesting matchup because I'm always, usually we have cameras there, so I'm showing up about midway through. And I always find myself very intrigued with the Division 7 game. It's always one of those ones that I love watching. For instance, in this case, it will be a Jackson Lumen Christi, but whoever the team is, usually run an interesting style. I like watching those teams kind of just beat up on each other because we're getting ready for the Division 1 game.
Well, and last year the D1 game, or the D7 game, was that wild New Lothrop Madison game.
My God,
A, went forever because there was so much scoring, and B, was exciting because it was just punch, counter punch, punch, counter punch.
No question about it. But Jackson Lumen Christi, who normally is a Division 6 staple, is in Division 7 this year. They have run the table.
Talking about a staple. Just look at the sidelines, Coach Brogan.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're taking on Cassidy, who only has one defeat this year. This is the first game at Novi. This is the 11 a.m. game playing at Novi.
So, yes, those guys are going to be getting up early.
Yes, oh my goodness.
Well, whoever announces, this game at Novi, and then if Lumen Christi makes it to the finals, they're going to need to know how to say the name Walker Plate. Carried it 48 times in their last game, the win over Schoolcraft, and he is a workhorse. And obviously that's kind of the Lumen Christi bread and butter is pounding the rock behind that big offensive line. And Keegan Smith, one of our Anvil Award contestants, is their left tackle. I know he moves around a little bit on the line, but a lot of times he plays left tackle. He's headed to Central Michigan. But yeah, it's just big road grading, mauling line and play defense. And it's kind
smack you in the mouth.
It's the same Brogan style they've always had. Always. Yep. They run up to the line. Sometimes they'll just snap it right away. They don't even give you a second to set up, so you got to be ready.
They play very disciplined football.
Yes. Definitely.
This is a matchup kind of the irresistible force in that offense against the immovable object. The only loss for Cassidy was an opening week 2-point loss to Montrose that the Montrose team just lost last week to SMCC.
Yep.
So, that's obviously a good one. Then they kind of ran the table in the Greater Thumb West. They beat Ubley pretty handily, 27-6.
Yep.
And then they've given up 2 points so far in the playoffs. They've given up 52 points in total.
Yeah.
In the entire season, and 16 of them were in week 1, and I believe after week 3 they've only given up 22 points.
Yeah. I love the matchup because obviously from a defensive, they have 1, 2, 3, 4. They have 5 shutouts this year, and one though they just gave up 2 points.
Yeah, and a lot of those where they gave up 6. Those may have been second stringers where
6 and 8.
You're winning 59 to nothing, and somebody comes in against your
3
third
games
stringers
with just 6 points, and 2 with 8.
Yeah,
in this kind of the obvious subplot here is David versus Goliath. Cass City's never been here. They've never. I don't believe they ever won a district.
I do not.
I have it in my notes.
I can look that up.
First district championship, first regional championship, first trip to the Final Four, and they have a very dynamic quarterback in I hope I'm saying this right, Sandon Cothrell.
Okay.
Who's a dapper dandy there under center, moves around pretty well, can chuck it, and kind of is the engine for that offense.
And the Cothrell family is that pretty entwined with the cat because I believe, if I recall correctly, his mom might be the volleyball coach. But yeah, it's a family that is.
Well, the dad's the football coach.
Yeah, it's one of those families where the athletic department kind of is. It runs around, and you see that in small towns.
Of course, the thumb is like that very much in terms of families. No question about it. And you're right. They've made it to the district.
And then they got a rushing attack that's at almost like over 3,500 yards for the season. So they're very balanced.
Yeah, they've made it to the districts a few times, but really, they've won a game.
Right. Last year they lost to New Lothrop, which is, it's
absolutely.
And they've lost to Sandusky and Elkin and Pigeon Bayport a couple of times, and so it was hard for them to kind of get out of the
Sebowing.
Yes.
Yeah, but they've been in the playoffs the last several years. They've really been building this. I think they've been building
6 straight. I think.
Yeah, exactly. So
and Cothrell's got a nice pitch catch partner in Hayden Horn, who's a deep threat and can take it to the house.
I didn't see Detroit Loyola this year, so when I see a 6-0 game,
I saw them last week or 2 weeks ago.
Okay,
where they beat Madison. It was like 13-0,
16-0,
16-0, but it was like 6-0 until the last 5 minutes.
So they
don't have not a lot of offense.
Right. So that doesn't surprise me. Again, they shut them out, but
and that was a Madison team that started the season 0-4.
I mean, they've gotten this far. I think the road ends here.
Right.
I think we're clear with that.
Yeah, I think Lumen Christi is a pretty.
I'm going to take Goliath.
On that one.
Yeah.
Great job by David to get to this point.
Absolutely. And you know what? If they can play defense the way they played and find a way to shut them down, maybe if it's low scoring and they're in it at the end,
I'm telling you,
they find a way.
They can bring the noise, bring the funk on both sides of the ball. On both sides of the ball, but also multifaceted on offense. Like their rushing attack is, like I said, is closing in on 4,000 yards, and you got an all-state quarterback. Throwing the ball.
So maybe if they're not
that bodes well for you.
If they're not getting in the end zone, but they're still clock munching drives that keeps the offense for Jackson, Lumen, Christi off the field, then maybe they'll have a chance if they can keep it, under 20 points.
Yeah.
Then maybe they have a chance because, hardly anybody's been able to do. If there's only one team, that's Kalamazoo, Hackett, Pretz. The only team's been able to keep them under 20.
Yeah.
And if they are grinding clock, that Lumen Christi is going to grind clock. This could be an hour 45 game.
Yeah,
It's the complete opposite of last year's game.
Yes, all right. Well, so we're taking Lumen Christi to get back to Ford Field, and they will take on the winner of a game that will take place at the Northern Michigan Superior Dome.
The only Friday
in Marquette.
game for the semis.
That's right, the only Friday for the semis, a Friday night game, 7 o'clock. And that is between Pewamo, Westphalia and Iron Mountain, two teams who have run the table and two schools who
They have a history, a little bit in the last.
Have we seen this matchup before?
Yeah.
Where history in the last 12 months.
Why don't you enlighten the fans as to where this particular two schools played last against each other?
The scene was Breslin Center. It was back in the boys basketball finals.
One of the more controversial endings, probably in MHSA state finals history, not just for basketball, but for any sport.
Yeah, and it ended up with an intentional foul call in the final minute. And the player who drew the intentional foul, he was trying to foul to send the
It was like
play.
the final 10 seconds.
It was. I was trying to remember exactly when it was, but yes, it was in the final seconds of the game, and that player was Marcus Johnson, who happens to be the UP Small School Offensive Player of the Year as the quarterback for Iron Mountain.
And I believe
they're unbeaten for they're 12. They've won 12 games for the first time since 2000 when they won the D7
Wasn't he
title.
Player of the Year for basketball as well?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
He was a leading scorer. I know he was a leading
great.
scorer in the UP.
He was
last
that
years.
game. He was amazing.
He was.
I mean, you have to look at the whole
He was
game.
everywhere.
And his dad,
Yeah.
his dad is the
His
head
dad,
coach.
Bucky,
And, his running mate on the basketball floor, Foster Wonders, is one of the best players on the basketball court that the UP has seen in quite a while.
And they had enough playoff points to get the home game, quote unquote.
Sure.
The place is gonna be rocking.
I know they try to find a neutral site, but it's in the Superior.
Pewamo's going to have to drive 6 hours up there.
Yeah, and having covered teams, whether it be a Beal City or a Fulton team or wherever that go across the bridge, that is a hard trip. When you go, and it's obviously it's the same way for the UP teams when they come below the bridge to play a playoff game, so that's not excuse making. But when you cross that bridge, it's a very, very when you cross the bridge going that way, you still have 5 hours left to drive across to Marquette. Right. But it's a very tough thing playing that game. At least it's a night game because sometimes
and at least it's inside.
Yes,
that's
it's inside.
Huge.
Yep, so
that's huge.
Yeah, it's climate controlled, but the UP power chant's going to be going, and it's going to be tough.
If someone wants to send down a private plane for me, I'll jump up.
I will go
give you
cover
some
that
coverage.
game.
Yes,
absolutely.
But I don't
because you
plan
can
on
only
driving,
imagine the entire town of Iron Mountain is going to be at this game. You know it. Not only are they playing for a chance to get to Ford Field, they're playing Pewamo, Westphalia.
Right.
And say what you want, they remember.
Well,
and
I got family. I got the Iron Mountains like my UP team because when my great grandpa settled in Michigan in the early 20th century. He settled in Iron Mountain.
If Izzo has a night off, he'll be there, right?
Yes, but he will not give them a tour of the building because that's a no-no, as we found.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, obviously they're facing a PW team that when they played New Lothrop last week, it was a de facto state championship game.
Yes,
because those were the last two champions in this division. This is a PW team that's given up. We just talked about Cassidy. This is a PW team that's given up 56 points. 35 of that came against
last week
against New Lothrop team that had every thought that they were going to go back to this state championship game. They gave up 21 points in the regular season, and that included a win over the defending D8 champ Reading that we talked about earlier, and a Fowler team that's still alive in D8 right now, and a Williamston team that made the D4 semis last year.
Right.
I mean, that's not like
and
they played a cupcake schedule.
And we're good this year. I mean, they fell out, but we predicted
they were in the playoffs. And it's not like this is. I mean, this CMAC does have its soft spots in some places, but that's not a cupcake schedule by any stretch of the imagination. And when you give up 56 points in 12 games, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's really, really good. I think Iron Mountain's got a lot of mojo.
Yeah,
going
they've got the emotion in this one.
And they beat Traverse City St. Francis, a team, again, who is used to being at Ford Field, used to playing for state championships, and they were able to beat them by 2 touchdowns. They rolled the first couple of opponents. Mansalona and Charlevoix beat them pretty good, and both teams are undefeated. So neither team has faced defeat, or again, I don't even think they faced a real super challenge except for last week, and they showed their mettle being Powamo by being able to win 36-35, finding a way to win and advance.
I mean, the program in general is just a team that, or a program that embodies intestinal fortitude, and the kind of group that never backs down from a challenge in any sport I've ever seen PW in.
Right. With that said, I'm going to take Iron Mountain to pull out the win. Just find a way to do it. Yes, exactly. I just think the storyline would be tremendous going into going into a game that I feel Jackson Lumen Christi probably is going to win. Going away at Ford Field, they really dominate. I
don't know,
but maybe not. I don't know.
I think I might pick PW if they match up. I'm
going
to pick PW.
If they match up. Okay.
I'm going to pick PW.
Yeah, you could be right.
I'm going to pick PW too, but I
right.
that trip up there worries me a little bit.
Yeah, like I said, I've taken that trip with teams before, and
all right.
it's
so you've got
that's a definite advantage.
Absolutely.
So you guys
more so than a normal home.
You guys have PW
advantage.
taking on Jackson Lumen Christi. I'll take Iron Mountain in the upset to take on Jackson Lumen Christi at Ford Field on Saturday morning. I don't know what the date would be. December 1st?
No, it's
31st?
Yeah,
30th. 30th. There you go. Thank you. Kevin Trzynski on the wheels of steel here. Well, that's going to set up a Division I game, and outside of Belleville playing in the semifinals, I didn't expect any of these teams to still be alive. That is for sure.
Nope.
And but here's where we stand. And at Howell High School, not at Parker Middle School, but at Howell High School.
About 7 miles away.
Yeah, the 1 o'clock game is going to be Brighton at Belleville. The Battle of Black and Orange is going to be taking place for a Division I chance to get to Ford Field. Belleville's been here before. The bait is in the water, you know what I mean? The chum. Is, yes, exactly.
The sharks are circling.
Yes, I think they are on.
They smell blood.
Yes, and I love what Brighton has done this season. Tim Beckler, who we were here talking about our Anvil, I couldn't believe that they've made it this far. But I mean, again, because he knows Sakala, he just didn't expect that this Brighton team would be able to do that. They surpassed expectations, and really, I felt that the East Kent would win in the way that they won, putting up the points they did. Here they are, but I just think there's no one going to shut down Belleville. Belleville's a team, again, we talk about a team that can score in bunches. West Bloomfield was up 15-0. And I remember being on the West Bloomfield sideline. Everybody's like, "What? This is the best team.
Yeah, this is the number one team.
This is the number one team in the state,
and then,
right?"
And then about 20 minutes later, 20 minutes later,
they're down 2 scores.
And then all the Belleville coaches are like, "This is the best defense in the state."
I know. The press, that's exactly what they're saying. Yeah, exactly.
And Belleville, I mean, I saw it last year a couple of times where they got behind, and it's like they can press the accelerator faster than any team in the state, just because they can score 21 points in the blink of an eye. They did it against Monroe last year, got down 2 scores, I think.
And everyone talks about the passing attack.
They did it against Saline in the second quarter. Yep. Late in the second quarter, they had 2 touchdowns before you knew it. They were up 3 scores.
The very prolific passing attack led by the notorious CDR.
Yes.
But they got a good running game. Mike Jenkins and Travion Lewis, they call him Muscles. Yeah. Muscles Lewis can move and groove down the field.
Both of these teams have big offensive lines, big, strong, move the ball offensive lines.
Damon Payne,
you know who
Coley
hates
Smith.
Your analysis to start that the worst? Jermaine Crowell. Because the first thing he said to me on the field after the West Bloomfield win, when we're talking about anything, was their games with Brighton are always close.
Yeah, remember
this
last
is
year.
the fourth time they will have met in the last 3 seasons. They started out because they play the KLAA crossover. So Belleville's introduction to the KLAA
last year
they won. They had to win on the last play of the game.
Well, yeah, 34-31. Belleville wins in 2017 to start, and then Belleville wins 40-35.
I'm talking about last year.
Yeah, last year.
Game.
That was last
year's
opener. And then they
we
meet
were
again.
Stunned that Brighton was in it.
They weren't just in it. Brighton was up in the fourth quarter.
I know.
That was really Will Johnson's coming out party, and where a lot of people went, oh.
Yeah,
because he's facing a defense full of D1 guys.
And then Drew Reed hit Jalen Williams for a game-winning touchdown in the last minute or two, and Jalen Williams is back. They've actually moved him this year from wide receiver to tight end.
Yep.
And he's excelling.
Boy, yes.
He's excelling.
So, those 2 openers by a total of 8 points. Now, when they met again last year at the end of the year in the KLA championship game, it was 32-17. So that was a little bit more lopsided. But still, even then, there's no way that Jermaine wants his kids going in there going, oh, we got past West Bloomfield, we won the championship, because they know those Brighton kids will get stirred up as much as possible, because I know they did it against East Kentwood too. Look at these guys with all the offers. None of you guys have the offers. That perfect coaching. Poke the bear.
I love how that narrative now is so public because of social media.
Right.
Like, go back 10 years, 15 years, nobody knew who had what offers. It was never even a subplot in any game. But now that you can hear that, just like on the sideline too. Not necessarily about offers, but can you believe that they have all these guys that are going to college, or all these guys, and
usually it was back in the day. It was more like commitments when somebody had already made a commitment. But you're right. It's much more public now.
Interesting thing this season is the KLAA in general was not as strong as it has been.
I don't think it was as strong as it was last year.
Exactly. I mean, just Canton was not a team. Plymouth was good, and they beat Brighton. Mm-hmm. Fortson was good, and they beat Brighton. Those are their 2 losses. Yeah. But other than that, we just they beat Churchill in week 1. Churchill was a team that was there last week playing in Division 2, and had a chance to beat Wall Lake Western. I mean, they were in the game.
They had the ball
after the onside kick.
They had the ball at midfield.
Yeah.
With 2 minutes to go.
Yeah, I mean,
and they score there going overtime.
And so they're a gutty team. I just don't know if the competition around the rest of it, the Northvilles, the Salems, the Novis, the Heartlands,
at the end of the day, I don't even know. I think it just comes down to the end of the day. They just don't have the horses that Belleville has.
And all they've played is West Side. It's Holt, East Kentwood, and Hudsonville. That's who they've had to go through.
And that's always that weird district where they end up immediately going west. Yeah. So, but Holt was a pretty good team. East Kentwood is a team that's got some horses, and we thought at the start of the season they might be a team that would challenge, the Rockfords in that division.
Yeah.
And they didn't, and they ended up having a 5-4 season and sneaking in. But it was still a team that could score on you in a heartbeat.
And Hudsonville's always strong.
Yeah.
I mean, they're always good. They're a great program. Mm-hmm. So credit Brighton for where they are. They've played who they played, and here they go. But I will say, like we talk about the Belleville coaches, they also walked out when we were in the press box, just like, I told you we were playing, right? I told you we were playing. And that is really what it is. I think for Belleville this season, they're not playing.
No.
They're here to win the state title.
They're just a stable of thoroughbreds.
And they're deep. They're deep.
Up and down the roster.
And no matter what's happening in the course of the game, whoever they need to step up will step up. Somebody's going to make a play. They've got playmakers all over the field. It's not always the same guys.
Right.
And Andre Selvin is the cornerback, fastest player in the state. He's going to Michigan. He returns kicks.
Yeah.
Dion Burks is having a breakout year at wide receiver.
Amazing year.
Just you lose Julian Barnett, just don't even miss a step.
Remember, you were talking about him in the scrimmages.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I was.
You were
I was
like,
I got to figure out who that guy is when I was watching the 7-on-7.
Yeah.
And it's the thing that I think we forget about the Belleville program, though, is last year was the first time that they really ever made a deep run. Yep. And I think they learned lessons from that. And I think they got a taste of it. Now we'll just see they're the program that's kind of left of those ones that we say it's time to prove that you're one of the big boys. And they've certainly done it up until this point.
Yeah.
They got to finish the job now.
Like Cass Tech, who was perennially always good.
Yep. Great PSL team.
Great Division I prospects could never really go. They finally got to someone they lost to on the last play. Was it Macomb, Dakota, or somebody? Right?
Yeah.
And I think that was the semifinals. I'm pretty sure it was. And then that was it. Their
They
catalyst,
break through
and then they go.
The glass ceiling
And then
is
they go.
busted through.
This could be a similar situation for Belleville. I like Calvin Norman, who's on that staff now. And I think they've
Anytime
got,
you have that type of football experience,
they've
calling
got,
plays.
I think they've got some good calming influences. Say what you want about Jermaine. He's pretty flat most of the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he's done what he set out to do.
Absolutely.
Was build, come Cass Tech West or whatever,
Right.
come and instill that same type of tradition, those same type of expectations. Get kids that are excited to play football, excited to play winning football.
Right.
And go out there and set the table and then go eat.
So we predict the Tigers to move on.
Yeah,
I think so.
Okay,
yes.
let's. The other one is again a matchup. There's no way I would have called Sterling Heights Stevenson, 5-4 to get into the playoffs. They're 8-4 now because they haven't lost. Taking on Davison, 10-2, and Davison, a team
Coach Weingart's.
that we saw, at Wayne State when they played De La Salle, and that was the only chance I was going to get You've seen them others. Right?
I have not seen
that was just the only time.
Yep.
And again, underwhelmed, but
No, but I've said for the last couple of weeks
we've had the highlights on every
coming
week, and I watched
down
the
here
highlights.
and getting their butts whipped and taken out to the old woodshed down at Wayne State by Warren De La Salle was the best thing that happened to them.
And they said it on the sideline. They go, "This is going to be our only loss. This is going to be our only loss." And I was like,
They
okay.
retooled, refocused.
Didn't end up being their only loss because they ended up losing to Lapeer, but then they revenged that loss in the playoffs.
They
and
did.
so, yeah.
They did. And here they are, still alive. And again, another guy who was a Mr. Football candidate in
rightfully so.
Brendan
Another
Sullivan.
breakout season. He had a breakout season last year as a wide receiver.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, guys, you think I can catch the ball? Watch how I throw the ball.
Well, and when you got a guy who, even if the numbers aren't crazy, you got a leader back there who's in control and is going to do whatever he can. He runs the ball a lot. He's just going to try to extend the yards. Again, chunk plays, kill clock.
Right. You only had to throw 5 passes last week.
Right.
And they ended up using the run game with Caleb Smith, 129 yards.
Right.
Carter Kreideman had 100 yards. And Sullivan had a touchdown on the ground, I believe. But it ended up being the formula of the last couple of weeks hasn't necessarily been ride Brendan Sullivan's arm. It's been ride the run game and the defense. And, oh, by the way, this is our trump card, Brendan Sullivan's arm.
I think they're going to have a harder time running the ball on Giovanni El Hadi and Sterling Heights Stevenson.
He's such a disruptive force.
Yeah,
he's all over the field.
And just that Mac Red experience that defense has had and how they've had to clutch and claw to get themselves. Again, I saw Stevenson in week 1 of the playoffs after they had beat Warren Mott with a field goal in the last minute to get into the playoffs. And really, actually, I mean, it was a good game, and Warren Mott had opportunities to win the game, especially later. But Sterling Heights Stevenson played really, really well in that game. And once they heard the news that Chippewa Valley had lost, they loved their chances. Yeah. And here they are. I mean, they took care of Dakota. Granted, that was a shootout, 38-35. And then on the exact opposite, they beat Cass Tech in the regional 9-7.
Yep.
I would have never thought they would have been able to hold Cass Tech to 7 points. I just would not have called that based on what Cass Tech had done the last 5 weeks.
And I'm obsessed with names. Another great name.
All right, keep
another
shouting
great name at quarterback for Stevens, Biagio Madonna.
Yeah, it is.
Yes.
It is.
Third string quarterback.
Yeah.
He's the third quarterback they went to this year.
And I think he's just a sophomore.
He's a sophomore.
Yeah,
He's
he's young.
Yep, and he's kind of been part of the, as we've talked about before, with sometimes with the 5-4 teams, they're almost like the wild card teams in baseball, where they have to be hot at the end of the season to get in, and then they carry that on, and they've kind of carried that run on into the playoffs.
Sounds like the name of like a old European count, like. Welcome, Biagio Madonna.
And I can't. Yeah, and and again, this is what we're 10 years removed now from Jason Fracassa.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the
DJ
last
Mershman.
Sterling Heights Stevenson team to get to a state final.
Rick Bye.
It's going to be a really interesting game. This is a 1:00 game at Troy Athens, so that's where they'll play that one. How do you see this one playing out? Who's going to win?
I think it's going to be Davison.
I'm going to go the other direction. I'm going to say that the Cinderella story continues, and Stevenson somehow claws their way into
that's the way I see it too. I see a clawing. I see it many more points than what we saw last week. I think it's very much like the Macomb Dakota game. I think it's going to be a 30-27 kind of game.
I think we've talked about before. I think that Davison program is kind of a sleeping giant, and I think they're kind of in the position maybe a year or two back from where Belleville is, but where, like we said, where they're knocking on the door, and this is going to be maybe their chance to crack through. And I think they certainly have all of the parts. They've got a very good defense. They've got a very good offense, and I think maybe this is just the time.
And they beat Eisenhower convincingly last week. I mean, there was nothing close about it. They got it done 35-7. And if they were ever going to have a chance, they know this is their moment.
And that's kind of what we were, you said the MAC Red. Well, Ike is another team, and they kind of physically
Ike beat Lake Orion.
Yeah.
And, we saw what Lake Orion was doing this year. So
this is as wide as D1 has been open in.
They didn't just beat Lake Orion. They pounded.
It was 27-20 as the final, but it wasn't that close. Yeah. I think Lake Orion had lake scores to keep it closer. So that's how we're going to call it. Scott and I have Stevenson taking on Belleville. You've got Davison taking Belleville. So we'll see how Division I plays out. Should be, and like you just said it, so it's wide open. It is wide open. So that's going to make for a really fun final, no matter who it is. But I think it's Belleville's coronation, but we'll see how it plays out. All right, the game that will take place at 4:30 on Saturday afternoon, the Division 5 game. And we've got Detroit representing, at least in the semifinals part of this particular division. Detroit Denby is still alive as they take on an unbeaten Almont team who is ready to they'll be playing this game at Walled Lake Central, and that is a Saturday 1 o'clock start. And you've seen Almont.
Yes, the last surviving of our Rivals Series
teams. That's right. They are the last survivors.
They are the last survivors. It was an Almont team that they were playing an Armada team that, they didn't have to crack open the entire book of tricks in that
game you went to. Yeah.
It was they got out early and kind of made sure that there was going to be no upset in that game,
and then went and took care of Richmond after that, which is their real rival.
Right,
I would say now.
They've had to go to Richmond twice, and I think they probably used that as a little bit of motivation that they actually beat Richmond in the regular season and then had to travel there again in the playoffs because of playoff points.
Yeah,
and kind of put the hammer down a second time.
And that's right in the beginning of the playoffs too.
Yeah, their hurdle was getting past that Marine City block, and especially because that was the final game for Coach Glodich. You knew there was some emotion going there, and they got a 2-point win there. And then they were facing a talented Swan Valley team that was a little inconsistent, a little up and down. There wasn't necessarily a team that was a juggernaut, but still very capable of beating them. And so now they've got a Denby team that is very defensive minded. Other than the 27 they gave up to King in the PSL championship, and then in the regular season they gave up 32. Other than that, they've given up 18, 14, 6, and nothing.
Yeah.
In the rest, they have
seven shutouts.
Yeah, the cornerstone of that defense, Latrell Tompkins. We've talked about him a lot here on our podcast. Came over from a charter school that shut down. So it's his first year in this PSL. He's made a ginormous impact on both sides of the ball, not just getting after the quarterback and ball carriers, but he's also a tight end, stretching the field. Brandon Grimes is playing some great quarterback.
They've got a ton of momentum. I mean, they've got to feel really good about themselves. And, I know they're working hard to get ready for this game, and
Tompkins takes back kicks as well.
Okay, yeah, I mean they just haven't had a real juggernaut of competition here in the playoffs so far.
The deepest Denby's ever been.
Yeah, right. So. And I think this is where it ends, as I think Almont will continue their undefeated season because based on competition, really. We both got Almont. Lansing Catholic, another team that is familiar with playing for state championships and has always had talented signal callers.
Throwback to the Tony Poljan era.
Yeah, Cooper Rush.
The Fighting
Cooper Rush.
Right, absolutely.
With the Dallas Cowboys.
Yes, sir.
Back up right now.
And they'll take on Kingsley. And this game's going to be at Greenville High School, and 1 o'clock start on Saturday. Kingsley is the home team because they're undefeated. And I don't know much about Kingsley. I know typically that Lansing Catholic is a team that I wouldn't bet against in most cases. But again, the teams that they beat a good, Traverse City, St. Francis, they beat them.
Mm-hmm.
Maple City, Glen Lake, they beat them.
They beat them. Yep.
So
Sheboygan, Reed City, Muskegon, Oak Ridge, they beat.
Yeah.
Oak Ridge was very good,
and they done it by putting up. I mean, look at their point totals. They've had over 42 points in every game except since week 4.
Well, and I think it's the most points they've scored since 2005 when they won the state title. They were their one loss that year was at the start of the season against St. Francis, and then they ran the table and beat Monroe St. Mary CC in the D6 finals. We talked before about Tim Wooer coming back from TC West. The last 4 seasons, 5 wins, 3 wins, and 1 win in 2017. Comes back last year, gets them to 10-2 and to the regional finals, and this year unbeaten all the way through. They've given up 231 points, but they've scored a ton. They've scored 548 points so far this season. Like you said, they put up 60 a couple of times and 58 against Kalkaska, and this is a team that can sling the ball around. But Lansing Catholic has the ability to sling the ball around. They've scored 490 points. And if you match up their schedule, you want to look at Lansing Catholic playing in the CAC White with Portland and splitting the two. They lost to Portland in the regular season, was their only loss, and then they beat Portland 21-0 in the district finals. They played Grand Rapids West Catholic, and they played a very good Fowlerville team and just absolutely throttled them. So if you want to look at the schedule,
talked about Kalamazoo Catholic earlier today and some of their wins. What I love, and I'm big on momentum and how a team plays, after week 5, so we go to week 6, they lose by a point to Portland. They come back, they put 55 on Charlotte, and they roll the rest of the way, and they get Portland a couple of weeks ago, and they shut them out. So they're like, we're not even going to give you a point. I love when teams get on that kind of a roll and believe in what the coaches are telling them, get in the system, and that's why I'm going to pick them to move on.
That's a Portland team that was in the D5 finals last year,
exactly.
So that's not a slouch program, and that's always they're kind of the two big dogs in the CAC White. So that's kind of the routine. But yeah, you're right. That Lansing Catholic team has kind of been on a roll since then. It's going to be a toss-up for me. I mean, Kingsley can score a lot of points, and I know that they're on a mission. I might go with Kingsley in this one, even though I kind of have knowledge of both coaching staffs, and obviously
Freeland was a good team. They just beat, and they put 43 up on them. So
absolutely,
absolutely. They beat Muskegon Oak Ridge, who was a good team. They put 51 on them. So I like it.
It's a Kingsley team that can score.
I'm going to go Kingsley.
Okay, so I'll take Lansing Catholic. I don't mind planting my flag right there. Either way, we're going to take on Almont, we believe, for the state championship. Should be a great state championship game no matter who makes it. And if somehow Denby continues the dream, then we'll be right there to root them on. So, again, that will be a game that we will see on Saturday at 4:30. Finally, in Division 3.
Let me just finish off by saying it's good for the PSL. Where
it's
been the King Cash show for so long. Yes, East English kind of popped their head up a little bit, but it's just good. I'm happy for Denby and for the city and for the league.
And a few years ago, I think we had Detroit Central get to the semifinals. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, that was with the Juju Jordan.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, the former King quarterback. Yeah. So that was cool. So yeah, it is good. We want to see them. Because again, if you are a high school football fan and you think about PSL football, you think about some of those southeastern teams that were unbelievable, and it's good to see.
William Golston.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Back in the day with McKenzie and Pershing. And the powerhouses.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Jerome Bettis.
Is he from Detroit?
Yes, believe it or not,
I think
exactly.
He was more highly touted as a again history
as a bowler,
rabbit hole, but he was more highly touted as a linebacker in high school than he was as a running back.
He is a good bowler too, though. Yes, he is. He loves bowling. All right, let's move to what will be Division III, which oftentimes the 7:30 game, the final game of the high school state championship game, turns out to be the best game. Yeah. There's no question about it.
A lot of times it goes long.
Yeah,
and if you're on a deadline, it's not the best for you as a writer or an editor.
Yeah, and a lot of times too, the Division V game, for whatever reason, ends up being a kind of a dog for whatever reason. We're ready for 3, and then boom, here we go, and we get a great game. Let's see who is potentially going to be there. First off, I think we can just start with DeWitt and Muskegon. I don't think there's anybody they're going to play this one at East Kentwood. I don't think there's any way that we're going to not see Muskegon in the state finals. I give DeWitt a lot of credit, beating Edwardsburg.
Everybody thought, I think, that this was going to be an Edwardsburg-Muskegon collision for valid reasons. I mean, that was a very, very good Edwardsburg team.
Yeah, and their state championship pedigree, just because they're up a division doesn't mean they're not going to still be great.
And we talked about it a little bit on the podcast on Friday. I felt a little validated because I'd had DeWitt ranked pretty highly early on in the season, and then they lost, I believe, in week 2 to Portland.
Yeah.
And then, after that they were 3-2 after week 5 when they lost to East Lansing, so it was kind of like maybe I'd overrated them.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not.
Yeah, exactly.
This is a very good DeWitt team that, from all reports from that game, kind of physically imposed their will on an Edwardsburg that, as we were talking about with the Anvil Award earlier today, that's kind of their brand, is physically imposing the will. And that when you have one thing that you do and you get it handed to you like that, that's impressive. I mean, this DeWitt team hasn't given up. They gave up 55 points in the first 2 games of the season. They've only allowed one team since then to score more than 15. None of those teams were Muskegon,
obviously. They're about to walk into a buzzsaw.
Yes, and Cam Martinez is a machine that is on a mission.
It's a human joystick.
Obviously, last year, the way they lost in the finals. Yeah, the way they lost in the final was motivation.
Absolutely.
We should just call him Cam Madden.
Yes,
Cam Martinez.
Yes, exactly. The chip on their soldiers, all of them, is they just want to punish everyone in their way. And they want to make this. They want to be recognized, I believe, as the best Muskegon team of all time. And at the end, if they continue this path, and they do it, and if they do it in the fashion they've done it, it's going to be a good argument. Yeah. So we'll see what happens. I see them moving on now. Who they'll play will be interesting.
Yes.
River Rouge and Orchard Lake got together last week. We're in the press box in the third quarter of the Belleville game. We're like, hey, let's check and see how Orchard Lake is doing. And it was a running clock.
Yeah. Didn't see that coming.
Yeah. So River Rouge has had an amazing season. And you talk about how you schedule things. And you talk about playing, when you've got a division that, let's face it, is not strong. Mm-hmm. And you've got to do what you can do to schedule the best teams you can. Grand Rapids Catholic Central.
A close loss there, so you kind of can get out of that what you can get out of that.
Yep, exactly. And they ended the season with Detroit Catholic Central
which they won,
and Southfield A&T. And a Southfield A&T team that had to win to get in the playoffs at Southfield A&T.
Yeah.
And the trash talking was going because the Blue Jays felt you just look at from a talent perspective, just from the
they should be contending for a state championship.
Yeah, I know. And even
fighting to make the playoffs.
And even Corey Parker was saying that after the game. He's like, you saw the talent on that? Yeah. Those guys could give one side of the field to the other, and you guys found a way to win. And they did. They beat them 31-24. And they've rolled through here and, again, take out an Orchard Lake St. Mary's team in convincing.
They have such a physical running game led by DeAndre Bully, who just reopened his recruitment. You'll be able to read about it on our web page today. Opened it up, decommitting from Akron, and he's one of these guys that just forget about 3 yards in a cloud of dust. It's like 7 yards in a cloud of dust. He's a punishing runner that's gone over 1,000 yards every year since his sophomore season, and he's a bell cow.
Well, as we were talking about, I know it was applied to somebody else in there, but when you've got 230-odd pounds coming at you that fast as a defender and you're smaller, you make a business decision at that point.
Yeah, right.
Whether or not, how hard you want to get hit.
And on a quick recruiting aside, the rumors I'm hearing is Wisconsin could be coming in on him, and they kind of view him as a Jonathan Taylor replicant.
Yeah.
Built the same way.
They love that.
Yeah.
You talked about thunder and lightning earlier. That's the Wisconsin way. So they want some thunder.
And we've talked about their new quarterback at River Rouge, Marion Hrabowski.
Yeah. Hrabowski
is gradually.
Oh, he's played great.
Get the momentum building in his own play and getting better every game. Improving
they put
every
49
game.
points against that Eaglet defense. So obviously he's really
he's
coming
athletic.
into his own now.
Yeah.
He's found his footing.
He's finding a groove.
Yeah.
On the other side of the ball, they have a lot of talent. Guys are going to play Division I college football. I know Walker at the linebacker spot is going to Toledo. He's incredibly talented. I believe he quarterbacks that defense. And then Coach Parker, I mean, it's just there's a certain brand of football, a certain attention to detail, a certain spirit that you're always going to have from these Panthers football players, and they're making long runs in the tournament.
And he said something after they beat Southfield. He said, I want to tell you guys because you haven't had the opportunity that this is the kind of team that they can win a state championship. I mean, basically, he's seen a lot of teams that have been close, and he's gotten to the finals, twice in the last 4 years. So
last year they might have had the higher ranked recruits, Ruku, who's at Clemson, and but this group seems to be a little bit more of a cohesive unit.
I think they really learned a lot, and they had to jump up into Division III, into the gauntlet that is Division III. They're playing a team that is fresh off the state finals, and that is Chelsea.
Well, and if you recall last year in Josh Lucas's first year, 3-loss regular season, which, in Chelsea those are swearing words.
Blasphemy.
And so he was not the most popular person in town about, week 9, but 4 weeks later when they're facing up against Edwardsburg in the finals, you a little more popular. Obviously, they lost that game, and we talked about Edwardsburg kind of being a physical imposition of their will on that game.
It was.
And but even then, it still seemed like, with the passing combination that Chelsea had last year, where they were able to kind of stay in it a little bit and at least give themselves some hope. And then this year, obviously, they have just been, unstoppable.
Chelsea, though, has found ways to win, and that's what they've done in the playoffs. 1-score wins in the last 3. And but they're taking on a River Rouge team again. You talk about
it's going to be River Rouge Muskegon in the finals.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
And quite frankly,
it'll be a really good final.
I think that's going to be a really good final.
Yeah.
They're going to have their hands full trying to see what they can do. But you know what? When we were going into the game last year, I was like, I don't know if Detroit King has a game plan that can stop Cam Martinez, and that's
they did.
And they did. So. It's going to mean a lot for River Rouge to be there again. They want a title very, very bad, and they've got a really good belief system that's going on there with the Panthers. So it's funny, they have like a little film crew that films all their games and stuff, and I always talk to those guys, and I was like, man, you're going to have a heck of a documentary at the end of this season, perhaps.
Great highlight reel, too.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. But that's the way we see it. Muskegon taking on River Rouge will be the final game of the 2019 MHSAA Finals. Now, before we go, we want to quickly give our thoughts on the 8-player state championship games that are taking place. First off, in Division I, that is a Saturday morning 11 a.m. game at the Superior Dome in Marquette. Sutton's Bay and Colon, 2 undefeated teams, as it should be.
Magi. They have been stifling defensively all season long. They've given up, they gave up 8 points to the defending champs from Morris. They gave up 12 to Martin. They gave up 12 to Camden Frontier. And before that, they'd given up 26 points in the regular season. And I believe, if I remember the note correctly, none of those regular season points allowed were from their first-string defense. I mean, it's usually you don't equate defensive prowess with the 8-man game.
You don't.
A lot of times they're higher scoring, but this Colon team has taken that to a different. And quite honestly, that's how Morris won last year. They were a very stout defensive team, and I think that's why you saw a lower scoring 27-8 semifinal.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's going to be the Magi.
I'll go with you on that one. What say you?
Yeah, I'll take it
All right.
as consensus.
Okay, there you go. Consensus : will be your Division 1 8-player champs. All right, in Division 2, and it's great that we have 2 division now. This is how this 8-player. One of these days we're gonna have to we're gonna have lots of 8-player, Steve. We have several divisions of 8-player, and I think that's good. That's what's gonna keep football healthy. In the state.
When you only have, I think, 16 teams or so in Class D that were even still playing 11-man football.
Right.
I mean, a lot of those, we talked about this late in the season, like Reading is a Class C team when you look at it enrollment-wise, but they're D8 because there just aren't any Class D teams playing
and we saw so many forfeits this year,
Yep.
so many teams that just couldn't fill the team late in the season because they've got, 15, 16 guys. They can't play 11-man football. Are you crazy?
Well, you still see that some in the 8-man game, but far, far less because obviously you don't have to carry quite as many people.
Correct. All right, Portland, St. Patrick, and Pickford are getting together. That will be a 2:00 game at the Superior Dome. So you could actually see a 11-player semifinal Friday night, and then get a couple of games and get actually a really wild 8-player game at the Superior Dome. Talking about the Iron Mountain Pewaukee Westphalia game, and then you get a couple state championships. What do you see in this one?
Well, Pickford's only loss is to Powers North Central. It was week 3 of the season. It was a 1-touchdown game. It was another low-scoring game. They turned around in the second round of the playoffs and returned the favor, 22-14.
In the regionals.
In regionals, yeah.
Third.
Yep, and then they beat a very solid
That's right.
Hillman team.
I'm sorry, they don't play as many rounds.
Right,
So
exactly.
you're right.
Yeah.
Second, my bad.
Second round,
You
yep.
had it right.
And then they beat a very good Hillman team last week. Portland St. Pat's, again, we're just still talking about, a Lower Peninsula team that's got to make that drive up to the UP. I mean, they might as well ride in the same bus with PW. It's not far apart, but they're both going up there.
It really isn't.
And it's hard to play in the Uperdome, having seen teams make that trip.
Yeah.
But that Portland St. Patrick's team, that's a pretty good team, and I have a hard time seeing, other than the UP.
Points.
Yes, they're scoring lots of points
against those traditional, the Climax Scots and the Crystal Falls Forest Parks. Those are football names. Granted, they did the majority of their damage in 11-man, back in the, but I mean, these are really good teams. Even the Kinday North Hurons of the world are now things that we talk about when we talk about small school football.
Yeah, and Climax Scots has not been an 8-player quite as long as the rest, but that's another team that has jumped right into 8-player and seen immediate success. And you're right, 49-6 was the result last week, where Portland St. Pat's kind of really, really, handed it to them, and it's a Portland St. Pat's team that's very much on a roll.
All right, and that's who I'm taking.
I'm going to take PSP as well.
Pat's.
Okay, so there it is. There's your consensus. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you. Maybe you took in this whole program. You just soaked it all in. That's a lot of just high school football talk for you. Nobody else is doing this anywhere. Am I right?
Nope.
Exactly.
Deep dives.
Exactly. Deep dives. We love it. We want to share it. Whether, if you scrolled through a little bit of it, it's all good. Maybe in your comments you want to talk about some of the predictions that maybe you have. You're welcome to do that in the chats. And we will have one more Michigan Extra Point. It will be live, and it will be at Ford Field. So plan on us having a 10:30 start, and that will be Friday night. November 29th, correct? It's okay. And that will be right after the Division 4 game. I know I'm going to plan on having Jeff Kimmerly come on one more time to represent the MHSAA. Who knows what other guests might be lurking around that we could have maybe pop on set for a little bit. I know we got to get out of there before 11:30, so that's I've been told that. So we'll make sure that the show's yes, exactly. That's when the show is under an hour. We know that. But it should be great. It'll be our final show of the year, and we'll talk about the games that took place that Friday, and then we'll, of course, preview a little bit more of Saturday and what we know. So because we'll know the finals matchups for sure, so we'll be able to give you some more insight on the games that will take place in the odd divisions on Saturday. So that's it. Thank you, Lawrence Tech. Thank you, Hungry Howie's. No pie, but, go have one. And thank you to the Detroit Athletic Club and, of course, to the MHSAA. So that is it for another edition of Extra Point, and we'll see you live next week at Ford Field.
See you at Ford Field.